first of all, thank all of you for joining us today, joining us yesterday, and joining us on Monday. We've had some fantastic sessions. The roundtables have been electric, to say the least. There's been a lot of conversation. Today is not going to be any different. We have a fantastic lineup of sessions, roundtables, topics, discussions. It's going to be a great day to close this out. Without further ado, I know you didn't come here to see me speak anymore. Let's get on with the day. Today's sessions, this first one is going to be near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. It's on everyone's mind right now, ransomware. We have Morten and Scott with BullWall, who will be presenting on a comprehensive ransomware defense, taking your threat defense to the next level. So without further ado, Morten and Scott, please take the virtual stage.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen first of all. All right, so today we're going to be talking to you about ransomware and the problem that we are seeing globally today, and a new approach to solving that challenge. If you have a little bit of patience, we will do a high-level overview, and then we will take you into a live demonstration. We will show you something that most companies have not seen before, the actual ransomware attack and what happens while your data and your files are being encrypted. We will do 4 different attacks, one from an endpoint client, one via OneDrive, one via Google Drive, and the last one through a charging cable for your iPhone, just to show you that this solution doesn't care about the attack vector or how it gets in. It does not care which type of ransomware it is. In fact, the solution doesn't look for the actual malware. This tool is for the worst case scenario when encryption begins in your environment and the ransomware has already bypassed all of your other defenses. Then we can shut it down after a handful of files has been encrypted, and thereby stop all of your critical data and all of your crown jewels from being from falling to encryption, basically, and being locked up. So ransomware is a big global problem. It's estimated that this year alone, it's going to cost the world economy 6 trillion. Sorry, it should say billion there, obviously. $6 billion, and an attack happens every 11 seconds. What's very, very interesting is that out of all the companies that are infected with ransomware, 75% of them was running up to date endpoint and perimeter protection. So they had all the tools in place to stop it, but unfortunately it didn't. If we look at what the criminals are after, their targets basically is any organization where they can hurt the reputation, or they can hurt revenue loss, or prevent billings from happening. They know that if they put you into that scenario, you are more likely to cave and pay the ransom. They're also targeting organizations with low awareness among staff, because it's easier for them in many cases to get in. Or if you have large network entry points where there's many possible entry routes into your environment. If you host any sensitive data, any PII, personal identifiable information, you will definitely be on the list. And if you are an organization where you have limited IT budget and limited IT resources, they can also research their way to that sort of information, and you are likely to be high on the target list as well. So that was a little bit about the global threat. If we narrow in on Canada and look a little bit at Canada, there was an interesting report from CyberEdge and from the Canadian Internet Registration Authority that found that 72% of all the respondents that they asked had dealt with ransomware in the last 12 months. 68% of Canadian organizations expect to become a ransomware victim, even though they have prevention-based solution in place to try and stop it. And I think that just underscores and underlines why it's important to look at a last line of defense that can prevent the actual encryption of the data. Today, the average ransom in Canadian dollars is just over 400,000, and this includes all of the small attack on home users as well. We are beginning to see demands that are well in excess of $50 million around the globe. So it is becoming very expensive to lose your data to the criminals today. There's a lot of warnings from the FBI, the Homeland Security, the cybersecurity centers all over the world. and latest from the G7 countries and the White House as well. And what all of them are saying is they're urging organizations to move beyond perimeter and endpoint security that you're using today, not moving away from it, but moving beyond it and adding something that can detect and remediate the malicious activity as it's being conducted on the network. Ransomware, without a shadow of a doubt, is the most costly, the most disruptive, and by far the most expensive of all the different types of malware. And when it comes to ransomware, that malicious activity is the illegitimate encryption of your files and your data. So if you don't have anything that can pick up the actual encryption itself, you're not fully protected today. It really is that simple. Like I said, President Biden and the White House are also all over this issue at the moment. They have just approved a huge package for helping American businesses, and like everybody else, they're warning all organizations to take action now. We've all seen a number of attacks. We don't like to name and shame anybody, but these are all large organizations that would have had IT budgets, IT security budgets, and large IT security teams. And they would be using most, if not all, of the solutions that you see in the preventative wall over here on the left-hand side. And despite all of those efforts, the criminals were able to place ransomware on the systems and literally encrypt all of their data without a single one of these solutions actually reacting to the beginning encryption. So if the preventative solutions has been fooled, bypassed, or circumvented, or the criminals have found a vulnerability or hole in your defenses, once they're on the inside, all of these tools will not really help you any longer. So what we're looking at today is basically the sprinkler system. Today, in all of your organizations, you have fireproof construction. You will do fire drills and safety training as part of the law requirements. Smoke detectors are fitted, and if you have a small fire, you can put it out with one of your fire extinguisher. But for all of your buildings, it's a law requirement that you also fit sprinkler systems, and there's a very good reason for that. If the fire is out of control, you will never stop it with a fire extinguisher. You need a proper sprinkler system. And basically, the solution that we're going to show you today is a smoke detector and a sprinkler system rolled into one that just works on your data instead of your buildings today. So this sprinkler system is complementary to all of the existing security solutions. We have customers that are using all of the endpoint security products and all the perimeter tools on the market. They have seen the benefit of putting this last line of defense in place. Today, it's important to understand that there's a big difference between a ransomware attack and a ransomware outbreak. Attacks happen all the time. Pretty much every day you can be guaranteed that your organization will experience a ransomware attack. And luckily, the vast majority of those are repelled. Probably 99 to 99.5% of them are repelled by your preventative solutions. But when something gets through and it starts to encrypt, that attack becomes an outbreak. And what companies are not really capable of dealing with today is that outbreak scenario. So we'll show you how to deal with that today. If we look at how most organizations are defending themselves today, it looks like this simplified attack surface here. You have an email scanner that could be something like Proofpoint or Mimecast. You have a corporate level firewall, could be Cisco, Palo Alto, or similar solutions, and then a web gateway to allow users to go to the internet in a secure manner and avoid all of the dodgy sites. And should anything bypass that perimeter layer, then behind that there's a layer of endpoint protection. This could be antivirus, next-gen antivirus, endpoint detection and response solutions, or XDR solutions. There's maybe 60 vendors that play in this space, and they call themselves all manners of things. But common for all of them is that they require you to have an agent on your endpoints. And should anything bypass the perimeter, they hopefully pick it up and prevent it from executing on your actual computers. There's also tablets and mobile phones in your environments and IoT devices. They're much more difficult to put security agents on. but they can still very much be utilized by the criminals in a ransomware attack. So while the perimeter and endpoint is very well protected, there is still a lot of holes in it. Users clicking on emails from complete strangers, malware being capable of bypassing or circumventing or fooling a firewall, missing patches on operating systems or applications in your environment, open remote desktop protocol sessions that are left unattended, or maybe VPN tunnels that are not up to date from your home users can all be exploited. And of course, on the endpoints down here, you may be missing the latest signatures. You may be running an outdated version of your endpoint security, or you may even have a couple of computers that are not communicating properly with the endpoint security console anymore. The larger the organization you're in, the more cyber hygiene there is to manage, and it's actually becoming incredibly difficult to do this despite what everybody is telling you. This notion with just patching all of your environments is not as easy as many vendors would like to pretend. So there is a layer behind these two layers, and that's typically a data storage layer on premise in your own data center or up in the cloud. And this is the layer that all of your endpoints will go to access the data. So your users will go and request files from your on-premise data center or from Microsoft Azure or Amazon or wherever your data is stored up in the cloud today. So this layer down here is virtually unprotected in most organizations. And that's a shame, because the ransomware gangs today are not really after your endpoints. They want the centralized data storage areas. If they encrypt a single laptop or a desktop, you're not going to pay them $1 million or $2 million in ransom. But if they encrypt your common data stores, it's a very different story, because they basically neutralize the whole organization and bring everything to a halt. So if a ransomware comes in from the internet and it bypasses the firewall in this example, it will seek out an endpoint, and here it may or may not disable the antivirus. But at some point, it will begin to attack the common file shares and begin to encrypt data at a pace of 6,000 to 8,000 files per minute. And then it'll try and replicate itself to more machines. So if you have 20 machines encrypting at the same time, it doesn't take very long for them to encrypt all of your data. And that's when an environment goes red and becomes inoperable. This is when organizations end up in the news for all of the wrong reasons. And it's that particular scenario that we defend with this solution. Today, if you cannot answer these questions here, so if you have a single device in your environment that has been infected with ransomware and it begins to encrypt your data, can you see which files are being encrypted and where those files reside? Can you tell whether it's a local file share in your data center, whether it is Office 365 that is being encrypted, or maybe Google Drive? And can you also say which user has been compromised and which device has initiated that encryption attack? If you don't have a solution that can tell you that today, the outcome is probably that all of your data will be encrypted and you won't be able to stop it. So with the solution that we're going to show you in a second, Scott will take you through that live demo I was talking about. We deal with the data storage layer on premise or in the cloud. And when that ransomware comes in and gets access to your environment and infects one of your endpoints, the moment that endpoint begins to touch any data on premise or in the cloud, we react to that illegitimate encryption. We contain and we isolate that device. So of course, that single user will have some downtime. IT may even need to issue a new laptop. But what's critical here is that we stop it after maybe 10 or 20 files has been encrypted, and it doesn't get a chance to spread to the rest of the machines in your environment. And thereby, we save all the rest of the data, and all of your users can still continue to access that data and continue to work. The solutions you're working today is what we call first line of defense vendors. They sit at the perimeter in your data center on your network or on your endpoints, and they utilize a number of different technologies, all of the ones that you see on the left-hand side, and they look at the data coming from the internet or the outside world in towards your organization. And before anything is allowed past this red wall or this red barrier here in the middle, they do a scan of some sort to decide whether that traffic is malicious or non-malicious. If it's malicious, they block it. If it's deemed to be non-malicious, they allow it over here on the right-hand side onto your network. And the problem with ransomware really occurs when something has been allowed over here and it hasn't been picked up as malicious, but it turns out to be malicious. Because once it's over here, it's been whitelisted by all of the security you have today. It wasn't picked up by your email scanner, it wasn't picked up by the firewall, and it wasn't picked up by your endpoint security. Now it is basically free to deliver its payload, which is that rapid encryption of files. And it's at that point you need our tool. We don't look at for the malware or the signatures or the patterns or the behavior of malware. We simply look for illegitimate encryption on any file in your environment. We take a quick peek at the heuristics of a file whenever a file is accessed by one of your users. And if we see illegitimate encryption, we react to it very quickly. We can, of course, tell the difference between a good encryption that you're doing with Microsoft BitLocker, for instance, or PGP, and then the illegitimate encryption that the criminals are doing. And as soon as we see it, we sound an alert to the IT team. We initiate a 24/7 fully automated response that does not require any interaction from your IT team. We can automate responses. We can disable and shut down the device. If a user is on multiple devices, we can disable his account in Active Directory. We can drop his access to the network. We can drop a VPN connection if the user is in a different geographical location or working from home. And we can isolate attack file and application servers if they begin to be encrypted. Once we have responded and isolated the threat, there will be maybe anywhere from 10 to 50 files that was encrypted before we reacted. But we know exactly what files it was, where their location is, and which user accessed and encrypted them. So we can provide a 100% accurate recovery list that can be integrated into your backup solution so you can quickly restore your environment. And afterwards, if you need to do any internal reporting to C-level or to the board, or worse, you need to do external reporting if you've had personal identifiable information encrypted and you're bound by PCI DSS, HIPAA in healthcare, law requirements like CCPA out in California or GDPR in Europe. If you sell into Europe, then that is a full data breach and needs to be reported to the authorities. And that's all fully automated in this tool. So just before Scott goes into the live demo, I just want to do a quick architectural high-level overview of how the solution works. This solution is entirely agentless, which means there is nothing to install on your endpoints or your workstations or your laptops. We do not need to install anything on your file servers either, or your database servers, and we do not need to install anything on your storage platform. So very lightweight and non-intrusive. We do not need write access to anything in your current environment. All that we need is one virtual server that we can install and configure RC on. And once we've done that, we take that server and we point it towards the file shares in the middle of my slide here. Those file shares, again, can be on premise in your own data center or anywhere up in the cloud, wherever you store data in the cloud. And there's three very big significant advantages with this. The first one is, as soon as an update or upgrade or anything is available from BullWall and it hits this RC server, your entire environment globally is protected. We do not need to push it to your file servers or to your endpoints. The second advantage is because we have no presence in your environment outside of the one server, there is no performance degradation anywhere in your environment. And the third benefit is because we listen to whenever a file is modified, created, deleted, or renamed by your users, we listen into file event notifications or network broadcasts that are happening on your network anyway. So we don't add any network traffic to your network either. We simply listen into what is already there, and we don't recursively need to scan all of your files over and over again, like an antivirus solution that is quite heavy in terms of performance on your endpoints. If you are working in the cloud in Office 365, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Google Drive, we've got you covered there as well. If we imagine this user up here at the top, he can access in two ways. He might access via VPN into your local data center. If he begins to encrypt anyway here, we can see him on the network via the VPN connection. We can shut his device down. We can integrate into your service desk and raise a ticket to the service desk so IT can contact him immediately and say, don't do anything with your machine until we have a chance to look at it. If he's not connected via VPN, he will be blind to our solution. But still, if he does any encryption, for instance, in Office 365, we can revoke his permissions to the cloud very, very easily. So we can stop any contamination of encrypted data up into your cloud environment. Remember today, the criminals are not after the individual laptops. If they encrypt a single laptop, it's highly unlikely that you're going to pay them. They want the file shares in your data center or your data up in the cloud in these solutions here. And if they get to that, it is much more likely that you're going to cave in because the criminals now have the leverage, because you may have thousands of employees that are unable to do any work at this point. I'll just very quickly cover our integration and our alerting. We can alert via our built-in dashboard that you can have up in the security operations center. If we reach the 100% alert stage, a loud World War II alarm will go off and draw attention to our dashboard, so you'll react to it immediately. We will tag any files that are encrypted. We will give you an alert level breakdown. In other words, what is it that we've been hit by? And we will give you a user alert level breakdown, which one of our users has been compromised and which device initiated the encryption. We can also alert via email and via SMS. Many of these attacks will start overnight or over the weekend when you run skeleton staff or no staff at all. And it's very handy to be notified on your mobile phone then that a ransom attack has been done. And you can see the status of that very, very quickly. We also have a fully featured two-way RESTful API in our tool, which means we can integrate with a number of other security investments you have today. So if you have integrated in if you have invested into SIEM systems, network access control solutions, or EDR, so endpoint detection and response solutions, we can basically send alerts to those tools. We can tell those tools to shut down devices in your environment, or we can build the inbuilt functionality we have in our tool. The main point that I'm making here is we can augment your current security investments and make them stronger, so we can utilize those in a tailored response to a ransomware outbreak where encryption actually begins in your environment. So at this point, Scott, I'm going to hand over to you to take everybody through the actual demonstration.
Great, thank you very much, Morten. Okay, so thank you so much for joining, everyone. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I'm going to run through a demonstration of our RansomCare solution for you, and it's going to be a slightly less intense version I would normally do due to the time constraints that we're under. I'd like to leave some time at the end just for questions, but if you wanted to see this in person, I can give you the more detailed demonstration, and we'd be delighted to do that for you as well. So first of all, I'm going to take you through a very light overview of the RC console, and then we're going to move into some of the demonstrations. So just to set the scene for you here, I've got RC running on a single Hyper-V image. So it just sits on a virtual server that lives within your data center, whether that's on premise or in the cloud. It's a very, very lightweight server. RC itself is very quick and easy to install and configure as well. So I'm just going to take you through one very quick page of configuration, just because it's going to help you to have a better understanding of how RC actually does what it does. And this is our monitoring zone page. This is where we add the shares and the sites that we want to monitor from within RC. So whether they're your on-premise file shares, and this includes DFS namespaces, or your cloud-based solutions that you might be using. So Office 365, SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive, and of course we support team sites as well. So basically we add the shares in here. We can either add them individually or we can import them all at once from a CSV list. But once they've been added, they appear in this window below. We only need to add the top level share. RC will automatically monitor everything underneath that top level. It only needs read-only access to do what it does. And most importantly, as Morton's just touched on, it doesn't recursively scan your environment. So we're not looking at every single file. We're just looking for the changes. So RC picks up on that traffic that already exists on your network. As it sees someone accessing a file, that's when it becomes interested. So with that said, I'm going to take you back to the dashboard now. What we're going to do here is simulate some traffic, and you're actually going to see this in practice now. So what we're looking at here is basically a simulation of your users, and they're going about their day-to-day business here. So they're either modifying, creating, deleting, or renaming files. As they do so, RC is listening out for those file event-based notifications. So basically, as it sees someone accessing a file, it's going to go into that file. It's going to take a very quick look just at the heuristics of that file. So all it's looking to make sure is that there's no illegitimate encryption taking place on that file. And once it's satisfied, which it will be just within a millisecond or so, it's going to come straight back out again. So it's not going to impact your users being able to access files. Everything we see within this live log is all pre-existing data. So we're not showing anything that doesn't already exist. Therefore, we're not adding any extra overhead to your network traffic at all. And also everything within this live log is all just your own good data. This will basically just tick along all day long as people are accessing files, and you can see exactly which files are being accessed at which times and on which dates as well. And this is also shown in these little graphical representations here. So you can see the detail in the live log, and you can see these little graphics moving around, which are basically showing you the same thing. So the next thing we're going to do is jump onto a laptop that I'm connected to here. So this is a physical device that I'm connected to via a network cable, and there's a user logged into this device. So it's basically going to act as my end user within my demo environment. And what I've got open here is a file share that I'm monitoring from within RC. So any changes I make to any of the files within this file share are going to be picked up by my RC console. And just to illustrate, I'm going to rename one of these files with a known bad ransomware extension. And for this, I'm going to use a ransomware called Lockbit, which is very current. It's unfortunately still making headlines at the moment for all the wrong reasons, obviously. And I'm not encrypting this file. I'm just changing its file extension. I just want you to see how RC reacts to me manually making this change. So let's click yes. We'll go back to the dashboard. And here we can see that we've picked that up straight away. So here our alert state's gone up to 25%. We can see the type of breakdown that's happened. So RC's determined this is a known bad extension. Here we can see the user who caused this change to happen. So John Doe is the user who's logged into my laptop. We can also see the server on which this file share is hosted. And over in the event log, we can see the file path and the file name that's been renamed as well. So considering this is just one file, there's a lot of information on the screen here. But because it is just one file, RC hasn't taken any action. If anything else was happening now, this alert state would be going up. It will be a very different story. But because it is just one file, this is RansomCare telling us that this user has been into this folder, renamed this file with a known bad ransomware extension. And from there, we could go and deal with that. So we're just going to talk to that user now. So we can, from here, basically see exactly what's happened. RC hasn't taken any actions at this point. We're just going to talk to that user, as I said, and there's all that information's on the screen. This is going to drop down back to 0 again very shortly. So what I'm going to do next is just go into my laptop again. And what we're going to do here is trigger a ransomware attack from this device. And I just want you to see what happens when we actually trigger a ransomware attack. So what we're looking at here is our ransomware app. So each one of these is a real piece of ransomware. It's very safe. It has been sanitized. It's had any damaging worm capabilities removed. So all I'm going to do is trigger this process. When I do, DMA Locker, which is what I'm using here, it's going to start to try to rapidly encrypt the files within that file share that we were just in. It's very safe. It's not going to spread, basically. So it's had any damaging worm capabilities removed. So I'm going to click OK. I'm just going to stay on this screen because I want you to see what happens to this device. But in the background, you're going to see everything turning red. You're going to hear a siren as well, which I'll attempt to shut down as quickly as I possibly can. So there's the encryption beginning. There's our device being shut down immediately as that encryption's been picked up. And there's the siren. So let me just mute that very quickly so you can see that device is being shut down. If I take you back to the dashboard now, we can see it's a very different story. Here we've reached our 100% alert state. You can see everything's red. And at that 100% alert state, this is the point at which RC starts to take action. So we've shut down that device. In addition, if I go into Active Directory, so here's my user accounts, this specifically is the user account from my user who's logged into that laptop. And we can see here his account's been disabled. And these are essentially two of the isolation steps we can carry out in response to an alert taking place. And there's a lot more we can do. And I'd love to be able to show you that in more detail at a later date. So for now, what I'm going to do is move over to my next demo setup, which is just behind me. So I'm just going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show you what we've got going on at the back here. So on the big screen at the back, we've basically got the same as we've just seen. Here's my RC console, but in this respect, it's looking after the file shares that this device has got access to. It's looking after the Google Drive that this device has access to, and it's looking after the OneDrive that this device has got access to. And I can show you each one of these screens individually. So we're going to focus on this one in the middle first of all. So this is going to be my Google Drive demonstration. You can see we're running McAfee on this device. It's all up to date. Everything looks good as it says. I can take you into my Google Drive folder. I can show you I've got a bunch of good files in there already. And then I've got my ransomware app once again. So for this, I'm going to run a really old ransomware called WannaCry. That's about 4 years old. And there's a very good reason why I'm doing this. Basically, I want to see whether, firstly, McAfee and secondly, Google are going to allow these files that have been encrypted with this really old ransomware to be uploaded into my cloud. So what I'm going to do here is start the attack. And then we're going to see the files on the right-hand side in my folder are starting to become encrypted. So we can see with some WannaCry extensions appearing there, we're going to see some decrypt keys and some ransom notes. And if I take you into Google Drive down in my system tray, we can basically see the same thing is happening there as well. So once these files are all encrypted, once that synchronization process starts to happen, those encrypted files are going to be heading back towards our cloud-based storage. But what we're going to be doing here is intercepting that traffic using our cloud connectors. So RC is monitoring the traffic between the end user and our cloud storage repository. So it's going to see that encrypted data attempting to replicate, and it's going to intercept it. It's not going to allow that encrypted data anywhere near our cloud repository. And you can see these files are starting to filter through, and at the point at which they've all filtered through and we've reached our 100% alert state, we're shutting that device down. So you can see here's our 100% alert state. Here's that individual Google Drive user who caused that attack to happen in the first place. So they've also been isolated in addition to us shutting that device down as well. So once again, we've encapsulated that data that hasn't been allowed to synchronize. It's been stopped in midair. We've stopped that data from affecting our cloud storage. So I'm very quickly just going to go over to this device next, which is going to be my SharePoint and OneDrive demonstration. So you can see on this device, we're running Microsoft Defender. So I can take you into that device one more time, just as we saw before. Here's Microsoft Defender, all up to date. And once again, I'll take you into in this case, it's my OneDrive folder. So into my sales folder. I've got a bunch of good files already in there. And here's my ransomware app again. So this time, there's no point me trying to run WannaCry against Microsoft Defender, because I know for a fact it's going to shut my app down. It's not going to allow those files to synchronize, to be encrypted, let alone synchronize themselves up into the cloud. So for this, I'm using a ransomware which is much more up to date. This is called Babook Locker. Now, this is still a couple of months old, but it did come out this year. So it's a lot more up to date than WannaCry. So we're going to do the same thing again now. I'm going to run that encryption. We're going to see that data becoming encrypted in my folder. If I take you down into my OneDrive. So at the moment, we're looking at good files within there. In a moment, they're going to become encrypted as well. And again, that same thing's going to happen. So they're going to sit for a few seconds. Then that synchronization process is going to start. Those encrypted files, once again, are going to be heading back towards our cloud storage. And this could be a home worker on this device. It could be somebody sat outside of your organization. Cyber criminals will target this device, not because they want to get to the data on that device, but because they're going to exploit that home worker. They're going to use that weakness of that worker being outside of your perimeter, and they're going to use that to try to get to your precious data. So once again, we're waiting for this synchronization process to happen. So it does take a few seconds, but what we're basically doing, we're not looking for every single file. We're just looking again for the ones that are changing. And we use webhooks. We basically add a webhook to each of the SharePoint sites, and that's how we monitor that traffic. So you can see again, after a few seconds, that data is filtered through. We're shutting that device down. We've reached our 100% alert state. And this time we can pinpoint the individual Office 365 user who's caused that encryption attack to start in the first place. So those two have been dealt with. So let's just reset my dashboard one more time. One last demonstration to show you, and then I'm going to hand you back to Morten. So we've saved the best till last, or the worst till last, depending on how you look at it. This is one of those evil USB cables. So it looks like a perfectly normal iPhone charging cable, but contained within the USB end of this cable is a tiny chip. And this has been pre-programmed to deliver a payload of ransomware. So obviously this isn't just any ordinary iPhone cable. It's a cable that's been set up specifically to deliver a ransomware payload. And there's very numerous ways in which cyber criminals will get these into an organization. I'm going to leave that up to your imagination, but once it's inside and once the user has hold of it, the first thing they're going to do is plug it into their device. It can't be blocked if you block the use of USB storage because it's not seen as a storage device. In fact, when I plug this into my laptop, it's going to actually be picked up as a keyboard or a mouse. So Windows will see it as a human interface device. And this makes it very, very difficult to block. So I'm going to plug it into this device here, which is running Sentinel-1. Now that's a next generation EDR solution. It's very good. In fact, it's the one that we use within our own organization. So basically this just goes to show that even next generation EDR solutions are under a huge amount of pressure from something like this cable. And all I need to do is plug it into my USB port. I don't even need to plug this end in. Once that's there, that payload is going to be deployed. That encryption is then going to attempt to spread to one of my network shares. And that's the point at which we take action. So you can see that device is being shut down. Again, we've reached 100% alert state. And here we can pinpoint this time the individual user who was logged into that laptop that's caused that encryption attack to happen in the first place. So very quickly, just a couple of quick points. There's no additional network overhead with any of this. And most importantly, there's nothing to install on any of these laptops. It's a completely agentless solution. Everything you see is just running from my RC server. So thank you very much indeed. Morten, I'm going to hand back to you now.
Thank you very much, Scott. Yeah, let me just share my screen here again. We have about 7 minutes left, so I will do my last 5 minutes in about 2 minutes, so we can leave five minutes for questions. Just want to talk quickly on the cost of downtime. We have developed a very accurate way of telling you how much a ransomware outbreak would cost in your environment. So an example with 2,500 employees, let's say that 80% of your estate is knocked out by a ransomware, 2,000 employees. You have a 60% dependency on IT system availability. A bank would be close to 100%, a taxi company, a lot less. They could still take bookings on the phone and send the cars out. We estimate the average employee cost to be $50 US. This is social, insurance, holiday payment, cost of office, cost of IT. And then we assume the average amount of downtime that organizations suffer when they have ransomware, which is 21 work days on an 8-hour working day. That's 168 hours. The cost of downtime, the lost productivity alone is over $12 million, as you can see here. Outside of that, you can see a couple of other examples for businesses. So 1,000 employees is roughly 250,000 per day. They're down 1.2 million for 5,000 employees and 2.4 for 10. Outside of that, there's many other costs that needs to be considered. City of Baltimore, for instance, had to do a complete infrastructure rebuild at $18 million. But lost productivity, reputational losses, lost billing, other costs, you may need to call in external consultants can add to the cost as well. So in terms of moving forward with this solution, we can do this in a very risk-free way for you. We gave you a live demonstration in our environment. We can do exactly the same in your environment, and I'll talk about that in a second. We can also help you with a cost analysis for your company to help you justify to the board or to the C-level why a last line of defense is necessary on top of all of the other tools. And remember, it's not just us saying this. It's the White House, it's the G7 countries, it's all of the cybersecurity centers around the world. Ignore all of that at your own peril, if you like. But we can do a ransomware assessment for you free of charge in your environment. It takes 30 minutes of preparation on your side to set up a virtual server and create a test share that we can populate with some dummy data. We can then come in and run a simulation app that can test how your network reacts. First, we will run it without our tool enabled to see if anything in your environment picks up the fact that encryption is going on in the background. There is absolutely zero risk of any ransomware spreading or doing damage anywhere outside of that particular test share. So it can be done completely securely. Some companies do test up exercises and pay Deloitte and Accenture thousands of dollars to come in and do these tabletop exercises, but they don't give you a real view live of your resilience. It's just by a playbook, if you like. Second set of tests, we will enable RC and show you the difference. And if you want to, we can also run a third set of tests with all of your security enabled, and you will have a very good overview and understand your resilience to an encryption outbreak. I would very much advise spending 2 to 3 hours on that rather than finding out the hard way when all of your data is encrypted. So I'm going to rest our case here, and we can open up for questions.
Thank you so much, Martin and Scott. This was very informative. Martin, while we're waiting for some questions to pose, I do have a question for you. I mean, it seems like at this point, worldwide, it's not a matter of if, it's kind of when, right? So, I mean, what would you say to, what are your thoughts there? I mean,
well, my thoughts. I mean, for the past 25 years, I've been working in cybersecurity for many different vendors. For as long as prevention-based security has been around, it has been circumvented and fooled and bypassed by the criminals. Now that they have an added incentive in terms of making a huge amount of money from ransomware, there is no way this threat is going to slow down. It will continue to accelerate. And if you don't have something that can stop the encryption, it is just a question of time as to when you get hit, no matter what security you're using today. So I would very much advise that you take this threat serious and look into it. It's a question of having multiple layers of protection in place, and you need to have all of them today. The criminals are getting very, very good at this because there's huge financial motivation for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The assessment that you just discussed, what's kind of the time frame on getting the results back on that?
Well, literally, we come on and install the product after you've installed the server. We then call all the stakeholders into the call. We run the simulations, and it's all done in 2 to 2.5 hours, and the report is available immediately after that. So very, very quick. I did see that there was one question from Kevin Gao. He said, sorry, if my mind still has Ricoh as a print file management company. Is this a new RC solution? Is this new RC solution developed in-house or come via an acquisition? So, Kevin, the product is developed by a Danish English company called BullWall, and Ricoh is our primary global partner. They have a very large understanding of this, and although I understand your sentiment with Ricoh being print and document company, they have a very large global security practice that do all number of things in security as well. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, I should probably bring that up. Ricoh made a change a year or two ago and has really gone down the digital transformation path. And this is obviously, one piece of that to make sure that transformation is secure. Scott, thank you so much for the demo. I was unaware that these chargers could also facilitate a ransomware attack. So now I need to check those. Geez, on top of everything else, phishing emails and everything else. So to both of you, I appreciate you both being here from overseas. By the way, I didn't mention they're both from England. So thank you for joining us here. And I'm here in the U.S. We've got the Canadian constituents, on the screen. So thank you very much. This was very informative. I encourage all of you who have seen this session to please reach out to Morten and Scott. I'm sure as soon as I hit end, there's going to be a bunch of questions that pop up. Please connect with them on LinkedIn. Ask them any questions that you like. I can genuinely say from my brief discussion with them, people that are in the cybersecurity space and especially, looking to dedicate their lives to helping save people from the headache of what a ransomware attack can do. I'm sure they'd be more than willing to sit down and speak with you about your specific situation. So thank you all again for joining us. Thank you to Morten and Scott. Our next session is one of our most popular. It is a roundtable session, and this will be on the hybrid workplace and understanding the new work culture and everything that goes along with it. So thank you all again, and we will see you at the top of the hour for that session. Scott, Morten, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks a lot for allowing us to present today. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.